Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Music Production Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Funk. This is the show where we get to talk about all the things that go into making music, all different kinds of music, all the philosophy, creativity. And today I have on the show William Kage, who is a software developer, a video game music writer, especially on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. He's going to talk to us a lot about his work and what goes into it and some of the limitations that these systems offer, which limitations seems to be a topic that comes up a lot for us these days. And I think they're important to get work done in a world of endless choices. So it's kind of cool to hear about a platform that is inherently limited. So before I say too much, I guess I'll just say hello, William. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for being here. It's a great pleasure. So you've got a lot of experience in the world of video games. And so the listeners know I talk every once in a while about the Long Island Retro Gaming Expo. And you were there this year.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah. First time for me going to that. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, we have a lot of fun. I'm usually behind the sound area playing records and getting the band set up. So I don't always get myself around to see everything. But it is a crazy event and so many cool aspects going on. I think like some of the stuff you're doing, like this like, you know, kind of keeping the systems alive, creating new games and soundtracks is a really cool aspect of the whole community.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff to see. I also didn't get to explore a whole lot at LA Retro. I was kind of glued to my booth trying to help people out. But yeah, we can get into SixEngine a little later, but I brought SixEngine is the game project that I've been working on more recently. But
cool, yeah, that sounds like fun to talk about. So maybe I can ask you if you just tell us kind of like your background, what you're doing, how you got here, and then we'll get into some of the more technical stuff that has to do with all this.
Sure. Yeah, so I've been into games since I was a kid. I started with NES, but I was a little too young. Super Nintendo was really when things got serious for me.
Uh-huh.
So I'd play, mostly JRPGs were what I was into, Final Fantasy, Chrono Trigger. And I'd put the game on after I'd beaten it. I'd put the game on just to listen to the music. The music really, it meant so much to me. You could set the mood better with Super Nintendo, tell the stories better with Super Nintendo than you could with NES, because you had, sample-based instruments. You can actually tell it's a flute, it's a piano, it's a cello. And for me, some people actually prefer NES, the chippy blip bloop, all that. But for me, Super Nintendo was, it felt like you had your own little orchestra following you around for the first time. It was amazing.
Yeah, the Nintendo is like, no matter what, it's like square waves and triangle waves and just noises. But the Super Nintendo was a very immersive sound. And I remember just like, I think it was like when they came out with Castlevania, Super Castlevania, playing that. It was just like, wow, this is like, we're in the game now. You're like, almost, how could it get better than this?
Yeah. And to its credit, or to the sound engineers' credit, I guess, they really were able to stretch it in a few cases to amazing lengths. One of them was Gimmick. I think Mr. Gimmick was later in the life of the NES, and I think it had a special chip. The Castlevania games had some special chips to work with, so you could have a couple extra channels. Or in one case, I can't remember the name of the game, but there was one that I thought even had like the FM Genesis type sounds added in. So you could stretch it or add a chip and do some really cool stuff with the NES. For the most part, it was just a few channels.
So that was like an addition in the cartridge that you would put into the system? Actually.
Yeah, I believe so. I think Konami had a chip that they just shove in there.
Wow.
And Shovel Knight is a great example of that style, where they have more than a normal NES game number of channels sometimes, but it is consistent with more of a Castlevania type. So they're not totally outside the realm of what NES could have done. And in fact, I think when Shovel Knight was initially released, the soundtrack, I believe they released it in NES format too.
That's crazy. That's like just another thing, you know, that like we're so used to not having limitations and these things to overcome. It's like, and like video games now are just, you know, regular music basically.
Yeah, I love that. Working with limitations really breeds creativity, right?
Yeah. So what yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Well, there's another component to it too, though. I think to just call it nostalgia is not enough. It's like if you grow up maybe listening to like you got an Irish family and you have a penny whistle, or your grandpa is lilting in the corner, you know, like that kind of stuff. You get those sounds that are specific to your childhood that other kids maybe didn't have, and this could be a kid who grew up playing Genesis versus another kid who grew up playing Super Nintendo. So Genesis was like FM limits, not so much samples. I think it can do samples. I don't know as much about Jenny. Forgive me. But Super Nintendo was all sample-based, not FM. Very different sound. So it's special to you. It's this penny whistle that you grew up with. So even if the sound itself isn't quite as rich on the Super Nintendo as it is on PlayStation or even Genesis, arguably, it's that familiar sound, right? And that's what it was for me. You know, growing up playing Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy, you hear those strings come in. And Uematsu wrote these beautiful pieces, but even just hearing the strings play from those games, that sample, that instrument is instant nostalgia for me, you know?
Yeah, I think you get that in a lot of things. Like, even if you listen to like old recordings, say from the 1960s or the 50s, or you go even further back, they have that sound based on the technology and the limitations they faced, whether bands had to play live together. It definitely has this sound that just takes you back. Just, you know, especially if you heard it as a child too. So the systems are kind of similar that way. What is the exact structure of the SNES? Because I know, like I kind of mentioned it quickly before we started. I have a Midi NES, which is a cartridge you put into the Nintendo, and it has a MIDI cable that comes out of it. And there's like a software that shows up so you can kind of see what you're doing when you're changing parameters. But you have 2 pulse wave channels, and I believe there's 4 different settings of the pulse wave, 4 different duty cycles. So you can vary the pulse wave a little bit on 2 channels. You have a triangle wave, which you can't do anything to except play. And there's a noise channel. And then there's a really crude sample channel. And so there's 5 sounds to work with and a story. You know, tell your story with 5 sounds. And when I got that, and when I got the Midi NES and I started playing around with it, and then I went back to play the old Nintendo games again, and I'm like listening to like just the music to Super Mario Brothers or The Legend of Zelda, and I'm just like, wow, you know, they took these limitations and really went far with them. And music that I'll never forget for my whole life. That's just ingrained in my subconscious from playing video games growing up. So I'm curious what the Super Nintendo's limitations and capabilities are.
Yeah, well, samples are the key, right? And to touch on what you were saying about NES, you can have a sample. And the first example that comes to my mind is always Mario 3. We had that drum that, as I recall, was a sample. But an even better example of sample use, creative sample use, when you just have one to work with, is Sunsoft, where they used a sample for bass. Mostly you'd use a low pulse or a triangle or some such, but Sunsoft used they used a sample, and you had to pitch adjust it because it just would not transpose very well. So it's really amazing from a technical standpoint that they did what they did with a bass sample. So in contrast, Super Nintendo, all you have is samples. You have 8 channels to work with, and you can load it up with anything you want: flute, drum, piano. And as time went on, we found some of the simpler sounds of Super Mario World. By the end of the system's life, you had things like Secret Evermore, which was the instruments in that game were amazing. So you have 8 channels to work with, but a lot of games would only use 6. And the reason being, sound effects fit into the same soundtracks channels as the music.
Right.
So if you're using all 8 tracks for your music, then you might, when you fire your gun or slash your sword or do something to play a sound effect, jump on a Goomba.
Yeah.
It could interrupt the music. Now, I think a lot of the first-party games were pretty good about sticking to 6 channels so that the 7th and 8th could be reserved for sound effects. But there's no shortage of examples where the music is using all 8 and you can get some interruption.
Right. So like as you do that sword swipe or something, suddenly say like that piano sound just has to move out of the way for a second.
Yeah. I have a couple of sounds queued up here. An example is Super Metroid. So you're in Brinstar. You've got maybe some of your items, a spazer and a screw attack and all this. So when you fire your gun, it, I believe, comes out of channel 8.
Yeah.
If I fire it multiple times, it will interrupt itself because it's just on one channel.
Yeah, I hear that. Right.
But Brinstar most of it is just 6 channels. But when you get to about the 35-second mark, it bleeds into channel 7 and 8 as well. And when that happens, if you fire your gun, I'm going to play that same clip with just the channel 7 and 8 of the music going.
Okay.
So that's the bit at around 35 seconds that bleeds into channels 7 and 8. So if you fire your gun at that time, it will interrupt. And the screw attack, your jump, also interrupts. So the drums cut out when you do that. So I think it's really interesting. Talk about limitations. It's not just the samples or the number of channels. It's beyond that, you have to restrict yourself to 3/4 of capacity if you want the sound effects to come through.
Right.
But a lot of games just didn't care by the end. I think Chrono Trigger generally uses a lot of them. You'll get interruption when you're hearing sound effects, but it's worth it because the sound effects are amazing.
Yeah.
I think that's the conclusion they came to is, if we make sound effects really great, then we're not going to care if the drums cut out, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah, well, I guess too, like the sound effect is a really important part of the game. It helps build the interaction. So, maybe it even gives it like more impact when something like that happens and then it pulls away something else.
Yeah, that's a good point. If the drums cut out, it's really going to
I really hit that guy. But there's certain games you play, I think of like fighting games a lot where sometimes it really feels like you're punching the bad guy and other times it doesn't feel like you're actually making contact. Like it doesn't feel to change the gameplay or maybe even it's the sound too. So those like interruptions could be important, I suppose.
Yeah, this reminds me of an NES game called A Boy and His Blob, where, I don't know if you played that one, but you're this kid with this blob following you around and you feed it jelly beans and it does crazy stuff. So maybe you feed it licorice jelly bean, and it turns into a rocket. Forgive me, I don't remember the recipes, but the point is, he does wacky stuff. And with the NES limitations, they got really creative with that game. They would they'd animate this blob guy that's turning into a rocket or a set of stairs for you to climb with the music. And that's the earliest example I was exposed to of dynamic music following your gameplay, your decisions. And then a more modern example would be really one of the few I've encountered is Journey for PS3 originally, but now it's on PS4 and stuff. Austin Wintory. That team made the music, the fully orchestrated soundtrack, follow your actions the same way. So if you do something scary, the music will immediately reflect that. But on the NES, it was so limited. It was really interesting to see the music changing as you play. I had never seen that before. It blew my mind as a kid.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to make the game develop too. I thought I haven't really played it much, but I watched my wife play quite a lot of it. Breath of the Wild, the new Zelda game. Well, it's not that new anymore, I guess, but it's, I don't know, 2 years old maybe.
Yeah.
But the way that game develops with the sound is really interesting. How it's very sparse actually, is what I kind of noticed. Like there might just be a couple notes playing, but as like things start to evolve or the bad guys come out, then it gets like it picks up. And I just thought that was a really interesting way to approach the music instead of having kind of like a theme, do 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 do. You know, as you're walking around the land, it's like much more open than that. Just maybe a few notes here or there.
Yeah. I think the internet noticed too. It seemed to be a contentious issue, but I think it fits a lot better with the overworld open world style of Breath of the Wild. You're free to go wherever, do what you like, and if you're standing still waiting for a dragon to appear for a minute and a half, then maybe you would grow tired of the trumpets of the Zelda theme or whatever it is. So yeah, it's a good fit.
Yeah,
it is very different from the other games.
Yeah, an interesting approach. So with the Super Nintendo, you're saying, just so I get it completely here, like it's basically 8 samplers, and you have one sample on each of the tracks.
Yes, sort of. So that's true of any moment of the Super Nintendo.
Okay.
But you can actually have multiple sounds on a single track by swapping them in and out.
Neat.
There's an amazing example of this in Brain Lord, which is kind of not too popular in my estimation. Top-down, like adventure RPG thing, kind of Zelda feel, kind of Secret of Mana feel, something like that. Kind of fun. But the music is really interesting in that some of the tracks you'll get many, many samples swapping in and out on a single track.
Right.
And you can do that, but not a lot of games did, so it seems that it was kind of tricky. I don't usually write music for Super Nintendo native format. I use Fruity Loops, and I just load up samples in the style. But I try to stick to the limits. So it's a lot easier for me to, go into my piano roll and swap some notes from a piano to a cello or to whatever. So I have it easy. But back then, oh man, swapping out 11 samples to a single drum track was probably quite an accomplishment.
Yeah, I'd say so. I've set that up inside. I use Ableton Live, and say I have like a drum kit, and I want to keep it all on one track because drums you can spread out across, depending on how many drum sounds you have. You could have dozens of tracks with drums. So I would set up like it was basically like a rack of samplers, and through automation you can change which sample will play on. It could be the same note, but it might be a snare drum here, and then I might change the automation and it's a different snare drum. It's a clap or something, just to keep things tidy and on one track. But that, that's on the computer. It's easy, automation and all that. I imagine that was that would be a challenge. Do you know how long the sample lengths were? Was there some sort of limitation on that?
I'm not sure. They were tiny. They were
Yeah.
crushed. So if you get a sound, let's say Killer Instinct, I know had some voice stuff in it. So whether it was the announcer, I assume was handled the same way, or just some of the, dance whoops. Yeah, that stuff.
Yeah.
All those voice clips that were a little bit longer, or some games that used drum loops that were an actual wave file of drums being played for a period of time. Those longer samples were super, super compressed and sped up. So if you rip the wave file out of the source code, you'll end up with this super high-pitched chipmunk clip that's a fraction of a second. But when you shift it down, stretch it out to the note that it will be played on the Super Nintendo, maybe down 5 octaves or something, you end up with something that sounds like some grainy drums, and it's this nice, maybe 4-second sound file. So it's amazing that they could compress it that much, but a bit of quality loss. But when it's mixed into 7 other channels of music, it sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, that's really clever to just speed it up and pitch it up real high and make it real short. Because I'm thinking to like a game like Street Fighter 2. And there's a lot of samples, and there was a lot of like, fireballs, Hadouken, it's round 1 fight and all the counting. And I always thought there's like a beat that plays when you are going to like fight the car in the bonus stage. It's like,
Yeah.
And it sounds like a loop to me. But I guess like something that's always kind of confused me, and you may have just answered it, is like, how do they fit all of those samples if they are, they must be, I mean, you record a sample on your computer, a couple seconds long, and it's a few megabytes. So I guess that's the trick. Make them real short and sped up.
Yeah, well, and they did expand it as the system grew older. They figured out how to slap more memory onto the cart and for not too much cost, and they brag about it. I don't know if you remember in magazines and things, they'd say, "Oh, this one's 48 megs of power."
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So I'm sure they had more space as time went on, but better techniques too. Some of the late releases for the system were really impressive. Star Ocean, I think, is one that I believe it did not make it to the States, but that one had a lot of compression that just wouldn't have been possible in 90 or 91. Star Ocean is 96, something like that. But a handful of years later, they had come up with a lot of really cool techniques to compress. And I've also heard that Secret of Evermore, which is a game I have more experience with, I've heard that the text was compressed. They would make a vocabulary of certain letter combinations that were most frequent, and then they could represent that with a smaller chunk of code. So if EE happens a lot, and you can fit that into one character instead of 2, something like that. So, a lot of different methods of compression.
Yeah, all stuff we never worry about anymore.
Yeah.
But would cause interesting creative results.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, I've got this plugin on my computer called Mini Verb, and I know there's a couple others. There's SNES Verb. And, being a sucker for video game sounds and stuff, I think I paid like $10 or $20 for this Mini Verb, and it's a reverb effect that's supposed to emulate a Super Nintendo's reverb. Do you know much about what makes that special? How that's a part of the makeup of the engine for the music?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm not great at the super technical bits of the APU. I think it's called an SPC 700. This beautiful chip that Nintendo used to handle that extra echo. But in trying to figure it out over the last, 5 or 6 years that I've been really doing this stuff, I figured out some of the other tricks that they use. So there's sort of two categories that the classic Super Nintendo sound, in particular the echo, fall into. Category 1 is just the system itself doing an echo or reverb effect, repeating the sound over and over automatically. So if you have one channel and the piano is playing on that one channel, you're going to hear the piano noise 1,000 times as it fades. But the other category is more of I call it probably incorrectly, Midi Echo, where you have a note that's actually played again on the same channel instead of leaving it to the system to reproduce that sound for you. So you actually have a note instruction and then a second note instruction that's at a lower volume, and then a third note instruction at an even lower volume. And it sounds very much like you're echoing down into nothing.
Right. Hello,
But
hello.
What's that?
Like, hello.
Yeah. Hello. So Earthbound, a lot of my favorite tracks actually don't use that first category I mentioned. They don't use the system for echo so much. They use note-based echo or like a MIDI echo. So you got, let's see if I have this clip pulled up here. This is part of it's the hospital tune from Earthbound. And I've recreated it in Fruity Loops with the sample. It's like a kind of a horn sound. So that's one channel, and it fades at the end. But a lot of times you'll get that same, the melody notes doubled up onto a second channel with a very, very small delay. So you'll have the same notes being played, but maybe like an 8th or even a 16th note behind the first channel, and you reduce it a bit. So channel 1 is at full volume, and channel 2 is the same notes at a slightly lower volume that's delayed very slightly. So this track uses, the melody across two channels is doubled up, and it also uses the slow fade of note information. So it's a multi-layered echo effect without using the special secret sauce echo powers of the SPC 700.
But that sounds a lot like a modern digital delay, where it's kind of bouncing back and forth until it fades out.
Right. And, you could probably get a similar sound from the Super Nintendo Echo engine, but a lot of times it just wasn't used. Chrono Trigger, a lot of the melodies in Chrono Trigger are pretty flat, but the melody is repeated in a second channel, so you get a nice echo feel.
That's cool. It's a neat way to get it done, to just kind of play it. It's a lot like a person, just like what we did with hello. It's the same idea, I guess.
Yeah.
So how are you going about recreating all this using FL Studio?
Well, like I say, I have it easy compared to the pros of the 90s working on the actual hardware. I pull up a piano roll and I plunk in the notes. I'm not particularly classically trained in any of this or trained in audio engineering. I just sort of figured it out as I went because I care, because it's so important to me. But yeah, you can take a MIDI file and dump sound fonts in it. That's a great place to start. A lot of people have written me emails that, I love this sound font. I downloaded a bunch of Pokemon MIDIs and I played it in Legend of Zelda sound font. But maybe we should talk about sound fonts
just
for a
second.
Just going to ask you. Because although I use samples for most of my official stuff that I release, I do play around with sound fonts as well.
Is
And
that
the difference?
the SF2 file? Is that what that is? Like SF2 sound
Yeah,
font? Okay.
yeah. So all it is a collection of samples with some extra instructions. And maybe that sounds a little bit like how to draw the owl, draw the rest of the owl. It's so easy.
Yeah.
I don't want to downplay the importance of those little instructions. A sound font can handle a little bit of pitch correction. It can do vibrato for you. So, yeah, you run into that a lot. You might have, let's say you pull a piano sample from a game, and I can come back to that. Pulling a sample out of a game may not be trivial for everyone, but we can come back to that.
Okay.
But let's say you pull a sample out of a piano sample out of a game, and then you pull a bass instrument out of the same game. They may not be pitch aligned with each other. So if you load the piano sample and the bass sample into your Fruity Loops or GarageBand or whatever, just as a wave file, they're going to sound terrible together. Mm-hmm. So you got to pitch correct. But with a sound font, you can bake that into the file, and you can have the piano and the bass in the same file. So now you can load the sound font into your workstation and switch quickly, instantly between piano and bass.
Okay.
For example, I don't have to go hunt for another wave file. But the LFO or the vibrato is the really special part, because that can be a little bit tricky. It's when you get the warbly. Let's see if I have this queued up. If you hold a note without that instruction, then it's just flat. But if you have some LFO or vibrato instruction, then you get that nice warbly quality. And a lot of games, all the RPGs I play, they use that all the time.
That is a cool sound.
But that can be, the instructions for that can be baked into the sound font as well. So it's really convenient. There's a couple of sound fonts where you have a flute and you actually have two different instruments in the sound font. One is flute with vibrato and one is flute without vibrato. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's convenient. It saves a lot of time.
Right. Yeah, and I noticed you have some for download on your website. That would be williamkage.com.
Yeah. I've made some, but a lot of these are just sound fonts that I found over the years. And when I started my website, I tried to host them all in one place so people can experiment, just like I was. It's tricky to make a sound font. And there are people much better than I am at making sound fonts. Blitz Lunar is one of them. He's amazing. But Pong Ball, a couple others have made some great sound fonts. Sleepy Time Jesse made the Earthbound sound font. So yeah, those guys are the pros. I'm just right. I just do it through sheer willpower. You know, I'm not cool. I'm not great at any of this. I just I keep mashing buttons until it starts to sound okay.
Hey, that's cool. That's I think what a lot of us are doing, right?
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
No. Sometimes you figure it out and understand it better that way, I think, too.
Yeah.
I guess like the reason it's called a sound font is that I guess that's sort of a connection to like just like regular fonts, because if maybe say a wave file is just like the letter J in a certain font, this is all of those different letters, the capitals, the bolds, the italicized versions too. Would that be an appropriate analogy?
Yeah, I think that's a good analogy for it. You can have your notes laid out for like the hospital theme in Earthbound, and then you can play it in a Final Fantasy font, and now it looks like it's sort of like if you took the Mario logo and you changed the font to be Final Fantasy font, the kind of sword looking,
yeah.
Embossed kind of.
Yeah.
And
So
doesn't
now
look like Mario's logo anymore.
So now it's sort of like you still have your MIDI notes playing the Super Mario melody, but it's coming out with Final Fantasy sounds.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
cool. That's probably a lot of fun to see just what these different games would sound like in like a different world.
Yeah. Like I was saying, a lot of people write me about Pokemon. They'll email me that they love throwing different games sound fonts into Pokemon, so you can hear a Pokemon battle theme played in Zelda or Final Fantasy or something.
Right.
There's quite a bit of YouTube videos about that.
That's cool. I like, because some of the sounds, like we were talking about Castlevania, it's so distinct. It's the creepy haunted house, castle. All those sounds that fit that. And then you could take something like Super Mario World, which has got this sort of tropical vibe. It'd be funny to just hear, Castlevania in the tropical vibe, or Super Mario World in the haunted world of Castlevania.
Yeah. And now you mentioned Castlevania again. That makes me think of in NES days, you could have I can't think of another Konami game, maybe
Contra
or something. Contra that might use the same chip and therefore have a similar quality to it. Let alone if the composer happened to be the same. But in the NES, most of the games were using the same sounds. Yeah, but a Sunsoft game almost certainly is going to have that beautiful bass trick where the bass is a sample. It sounds very distinctive.
I'll have to seek out a Sunsoft game. I can't think of off the top of my head any of the games they made, but I'll have to seek that out just to hear the bass.
Yeah, I can't either now, but they're great. I want to say there was a Batman game.
We have Google.
Yeah, we have
okay.
Figured out. But Batman, I think, was one of them.
I do remember that game.
But that's sort of the same idea. Is you've got a bank of sounds, special sounds for that game or for that company. And we ended up with the same thing on Super Nintendo. A lot of the Squaresoft games had a similar quality. So Final Fantasy V and Final Fantasy VI have some instruments in common. I think 4 and 5 also do. But on either side of that, Final Fantasy IV and Final Fantasy VI don't have so much in common. So it's kind of an iterative thing. Uematsu tinkering around with different bass instruments. Maybe they got better compression in 1994 or something, right? And, oh, I can have a new bass instrument. Great. I'm going to put that in Final Fantasy VI. But yeah, a lot more variety in Super Nintendo.
Well, now that you mention it, I can kind of remember certain games by Konami having similar sounds, or Capcom having similar sounds. Final Fight and Street Fighter had some overlaps, I kind of remember.
Oh, yeah. Capcom on Super Nintendo had a lot of the same sounds for Mega Man, Street Fighter. Yeah. A lot of guitar, beautiful guitar work. Electric guitar.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. So this is something I was kind of interested in talking to you about because, having the MIDI NES really opened my eyes to like what went into doing that music and what the limitations were. So now I'm excited to kind of go back through the old games and be like, oh yeah. And to check out some of the videos you mentioned where we swap out the sound fonts. That's pretty interesting. What are people playing these back on then? I mean,
generally just a workstation like Fruity Loops or GarageBand or what have you. Some of them do use trackers or sequencers. I was going to ask you if your NES card interface is, I can't imagine it's piano roll forgiving stuff like what I use. It's probably tracked, right?
No. It just accepts MIDI. So what I would do is I would go inside of Ableton Live, compose MIDI. You play it on the piano, just you can.
Oh, I get it. It's just an endpoint.
Yeah, it converts the MIDI to tell the sound card to play the notes. So it's not a tracker or anything. Like I've seen the trackers on Game Boy with like I guess LSDJ, little sound.
Yeah, LSDJ. Yep.
And I mean, I've tried to do that, and then like, this is like filling out spreadsheets and doing calculus or something.
Yeah, I've done some tracking and gotten it to sound okay, but at the end of the day, I just maybe it's personal preference, but for me, it feels less nimble. I guess I
Yeah.
can't take a note and throw it into a different sound quite as easily. Maybe with experience that gets better, but using the piano roll and getting in and out of MIDI type of looks is just it's so convenient for me. That's what I
Yeah.
do.
And it is really
Upsetting
nice
to the
on
purists, I know.
well, it is really nice on that NES with the MIDI NES to just write in some MIDI clips and then just send them to the Nintendo and it just plays
Yeah,
it
that's
back.
great. That you can't argue with the purity of that, right?
It's like having a synth, any other synth. It turns your Nintendo into a synth. It accepts CC control, it accepts MIDI, and there's not a lot that you can do, really, but you can set up vibrato. You can do like pitch envelopes, and pew, things
Yeah,
like that. It's very MIDI intensive, I guess, but there's not a lot of options, which is, I guess, helpful. But it is kind of like just sending MIDI to any, like, say, desktop piece of hardware or something.
yeah, yeah. And if I'm making an NES style tune and I have a track that's pulse 25 and another that's pulse 50, um, versus changing the pulse or the duty cycle on the fly, it doesn't really matter as long as I don't have the two channels stepping on each other's toes. Then the end result is going to sound true to NES, right? So
Yeah.
that's just how I look at it. Is if I'm making these Super Nintendo tunes in a way that is the end result sounds right, then it shouldn't matter. I think we can all enjoy it.
Well, we get into these debates with music a lot, right? We get into the analog versus digital, or
Yeah,
I know the chiptune world is very intense like that. It's a purist thing, and you need to have the certain Game Boy with a certain chip, and all the Genesis chips there's a wide variety of those, and
yeah,
uh, I don't know. I kind of have come to the mind of they're all options we have now. It's not like one cancels out the other. I can use a digital synth and an analog synth, and I can record a digital sound and an analog sound. I can bounce my digital mix to tape, and I can record tape to digital. Like, why? To me, like, and that's just a different philosophy, I guess. But to me, it's like I'll use all of it. I think it's all cool in its own right.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, if somebody is getting upset about the particulars of sticking to this spec or that spec, I can say to that it's okay. I don't claim to be doing it perfectly.
Yeah.
I don't claim to do it, but it's important for me to say that can be okay, because some people just getting into making music, maybe they grew up on Super Nintendo also, and they just want to tinker around with some Pokemon notes in a Zelda sound font face, typeface, serifs,
Yeah.
and have it sound interesting and new. And I don't want anyone to feel discouraged by like a purity debate or something like that, right? Because it's fun. Just play around. It's easy. It's easier than you think.
Yeah, and it's cool if you want to do that. There are definite limitations. Sometimes I like to record just the tape and not have to worry about anything digital, and just for the limitation of it, okay, I got to solve different problems now.
Yeah.
But, the only people that ever get really caught up in this are the people that make the music, the people that are listening, the general listeners. No one cares. No, we found that out in like mainstream music. No one cares if you're auto-tuned or not. It's
Yeah.
did you quantize the beat? Like, that's no listener
That's
that
sacrilege. Yeah. Quantized. Oh, no. Get out.
yeah, there's no listener that cares. Is the song cool? Do I like it? Okay. Maybe I can ask you a little bit about SixEngine. because you sent me a link and I was playing, I guess, a Final Fantasy prequel, and it was cool. I didn't play that Final Fantasy. The only Final Fantasy I have ever played actually was 7 on the PlayStation. I didn't play any of the Super Nintendo ones. I did play Fantasy Star on Genesis, which I think is in the ballpark anyway.
That's fine. Which Fantasy Star?
I did 2 and 3.
Okay, all right. Four. I got into. Not so fond of 2 and 3, but yeah, same realm. I mean, it's good stuff. Yeah.
My Final Fantasy, my Fantasy Star 2 came with a guidebook in the cartridge case, that like kind of told you what to do. It took you through. It was a whole walkthrough, and I know I would have never ever figured that game out if it wasn't for that.
Things were rough back then. Yeah,
They were rough.
I'm surprised you haven't played a little bit of the Super Nintendo Final Fantasies. Did you play Chrono Trigger?
Just a little bit. Just
a little.
Yeah, I mean, I've played them. Maybe like an afternoon at a friend's house.
Sure. Yeah. The weird thing is, I can't recommend them the same way as I could back then. Because nowadays I'm busy. I'm not a kid staying up 14 hours straight, 20 hours straight, grinding, right? Just repeating these battles, random encounters. A lot of that stuff doesn't hold up well, at least to a modern adult with 5 jobs, right? You can't. It's not going to work. And I'm certainly, I have so little time. I don't game much anymore. When I have free time, I try to pour it into music and game making. So I played Link's Awakening, the new one, a little bit. But before that, Breath of the Wild. I mean, it's been a while. I don't game that much anymore. SixEngine.
Me too. Yeah. Breath of the Wild, like, I know I'm going to love it. I've watched my wife play quite a bit of it. And, I mean, she's the type of person when she plays, she's really into Zelda, like that sort of thing. And that was always one of mine too. But she's going to get every item. She's going to go through every area of the map. She's not a person that like rushes through the game and beats it. She conquers every aspect of the game. So she's
a completionist.
Yes, she's very methodical about it. She has like notes and charts and spreadsheets, and but the game is just incredible. But I'm like afraid to play it, honestly, because like you said, I'm trying to make music, do this podcast. I'm trying to keep my dogs in good shape, and it's just really hard.
Some of us have pets to tend to, or babies' diapers to change. 3 jobs. Home Depot, go to McDonald's after. You can't play games. You play it on the subway, maybe, if you're lucky.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to eat hours and hours and hours of my days, and I'll probably get really obsessed with it.
Yeah, you'll miss your stop. You'll lose your job. It's terrible. Can't be playing games. So SixEngine, it started out not so much as a game. Let me back up. SixEngine is a web-based game environment. It's a new game engine that I made from scratch in JavaScript. So it runs right in your browser. Chrome, Firefox, some others will play nice. Safari is okay, but I try to stick to Firefox and Chrome for the mainstream. It's a Super Nintendo-like experience, right down to the same resolution, 256, 240, 224, and limited colors and Super Nintendo-style sounds. But it started not so much as a game. Instead, it was just a way to show my music in context. So I've been writing new compositions in the style of Chrono Trigger or Final Fantasy Secret of Mana that you can hear it on YouTube or Spotify or something, but you can't easily hear that in context. And even if you were to hack it into a ROM, that's a lot of effort to listen to a song in the context that it was made for. So I thought, hey, why don't I make a little game environment that looks a lot like Super Nintendo and play my music in the background? And why don't I do it in JavaScript, since that's what I've been doing as a career for a while? this seems like a good idea. And in about a day, just an afternoon, I had come up with something that looked really cool. You could walk around a little bit. You could get in a battle. And there it was. Final Fantasy Super Nintendo gameplay with my music in the background. And I didn't have to hack a ROM to make it happen. And I therefore can share it with people by just linking them to a site instead of saying, hey, go get this shady ROM from a site that just was taken down by Nintendo and patch it with a complicated process.
Yeah.
With this IPS thing. It doesn't matter what it means. Just do the steps. You'll be okay. Fire it up. Load this save state. 11 minutes in, you'll hear my song. It's pretty cool. No, that's cumbersome. Yeah. That's not fun. But in contrast, SixEngine has turned into this great way to show music in context. But now I've actually made new games in SixEngine to go with the new music. So it's kind of full circle now. Now it's all a bunch of new everything.
Right.
So, you played a little bit of the Final Fantasy content, is that right?
Yeah, it was the prequel, I believe.
Yeah, so I've started developing some stories. The first one is done that are like a proof of concept, a demonstration of what the engine can do. And what better way to demonstrate what the engine can do than one of my favorite games of all time, Final Fantasy VI. So I've tried to meticulously, faithfully recreate the experience with a couple of key differences. There are no random battles. There's a turbo mode and an auto battle mode. You can see the life bars on enemies, things like that. Just these creature comforts that make it easier for adult us to jump in and play for a few minutes.
That's a good consideration, considering what we just talked about.
Yeah.
How far did the games go? I mean, I played it for probably 20 minutes, just walking around. But is this like a complete adventure, a complete game? I mean, because that's, to me, sounds like more than an afternoon's worth of work.
Yeah, it grew into that. It's been 6 years in development. So since that first afternoon, I made a lot of revisions. I rewrote the walking logic about 7 or 8 times until it was pixel perfect. But it's grown a lot. It is a full story. The first scenario is about 2 or 3 hours of content, but it's a proper start a new game, play a few hours, get to the end credits. It's a full game experience condensed into a 2-3 hour bite-sized prequel story. And I'm working on the second scenario now, which is going to be about the desert boys, Edgar and Sabin, or Sabin, or Mash, depending on how you were raised. But in addition to the Final Fantasy stuff, I'm also working on a public, not a private proof of concept thing, but a public actual full game that will be more than 2-3 hours. And that's called Otosan.
Uh-huh.
So in contrast to the Final Fantasy stuff, this is my own full game, new IP, new idea. And it's more in the style of Earthbound. So it's like a modern day, instead of sword and sorcery, you have a baseball bat, slingshot. But same deal though. You get Super Nintendo look and feel, without some of the grindy stuff that hasn't aged very well.
Right. Okay. That's nice. There are certain times you play an old game and you go through maybe a certain part of the game with the impossible jumps, or the real frustration builders, time killers. The game looks really cool. I have it up right now looking at it, and it's got a cool artistic style to it. And it seems like a lot of fun. This process, it looks like you are having a really good time with it.
Yeah, you know what the best part is for me with this as a creative outlet is that it's non-profit, and it's just me saving up, paying out of pocket extra time And any donations people can give through Patreon, that's great, but it's not required. I'm trying to do something outside of the cycle of what's profitable and what's, I just want to focus on what's good. What is a really good
Right.
story that I feel like I need to tell? And if it takes a little longer, so be it. If I have to tell it a certain way, so be it. I don't have to answer to a certain publisher or standard or timeline or dollar sign. I can just do it till it's good, do it till it's right. That's the best part by far.
That's a beauty of so much of the world today. Like this podcast, like I'm not answering to anybody. And, the only person I'm concerned about what they think about this episode is you. I want you to be happy with it when we put it out, but there's no one saying we have to get to this, we have to throw this in there, and or even that I have to do it at all, which is a cool freedom to have, and so much of the media I enjoy these days is like that too, and that's what you're doing with your game.
Yeah, there's certainly a cost, as I'm sure you know, like running the podcast.
Yep.
You do have more duties. You do have more responsibilities with this. So I'm the music guy, the storyteller, the programmer, and the marketer, and the spreadsheets
Social
for
media.
the even the out-of-pocket stuff still has some dollar signs, and you have to handle it, So it's like, it's a lot.
Sure. Oh, yeah. I'm sure this is a huge undertaking. I noticed it looks like you're looking to get this on the Switch too, and as a downloadable game maybe? I see the logo, ETA Q4 2020.
Yes. Yep. That's the goal. Now, all this stuff depends on how things play out. If I continue to grow support from Patreon and all the beautiful testers that I've been so lucky to have, just zillions of testers willing to tighten things up with me, then maybe you can stick to that. I certainly hope to get that, but I can't make any promises yet. It's really tricky because you want to give people hope, but you don't want to. I don't know if you're familiar with Mother 4, but winter of 2014 was the original ETA. I don't know how much of a promise it really was, but that got delayed and out of control, and it is rebranded and now in development heck a little bit, I think. But I hope it still comes out. I don't want to be like that. I don't want to overpromise. But I do want to give people hope that this is a more rapid development cycle. I'm not screwing around with spending 6 years making this game. That's just not. It's going to be too late. I want it on the Switch. I want it like next year. And I'm working very hard to make it happen.
So what is that process like? To me, it sounds like it's a lot like releasing an album, trying to get on a label almost. What is the process like for getting your game? Because that's one thing that I think is really cool about what's going on with the Switch. I don't have much experience with some of the other consoles that are out, but I noticed like the Switch with all the independent games is really pretty neat.
Yeah, I mean, Nintendo had a web platform that you could take something like what I've written in JavaScript and get it to run natively on the Wii U with very little code changes. And in fact, I have gotten it to run on a Wii U, so I'm there. Switch doesn't do that anymore. Switch is just Unity. So I've already started kind of converting it to some other languages, the content that I've made, and I do hope to put Otosan into a couple other languages so I can get it on consoles like Switch or PS4 or what have you. But it's a lot of work. You do have to rewrite stuff. Crosscode is my favorite example of this. They give me hope. They were a web-based game, and they did have to, as I understand it, rewrite quite a bit to get onto consoles, but they did it, and I think I can do the same.
And is there some sort of like exception or vetting process that
There is, yeah. Nintendo is notoriously tricky.
Yeah.
You might be waiting a
No
little
blood
while.
in Mortal Kombat. I remember.
Yeah. Well, I think they've come a
Back
long
in the
way.
day.
But
Yeah. Well, Mortal Kombat 2 had the blood and the fatalities. Mortal
We're
Kombat
not
1
going to
was
be
sweat.
speaking to a room full of politicians to try to get the okay. But yeah, there's still a waiting process, approval process. You have to get, an ESRB rating or whatever the European equivalent. If it's going to be eShop and nationally available, then you got to, jump through some of those hoops. But it's mostly just waiting. But that's part of the thing is if I can get it out, let's say by end of next year, worst case, I hope, then it might still be another, who knows, 6 months, 10 months of waiting on Nintendo.
Right.
Even if I had the code ready for the Switch. And that's if they do okay it. Maybe they come back after 6 months and they say, sorry, you got to change this. There's too much suggestive content here. I just don't know for sure. And from what little I can gather through the weeds of non-disclosure on the internet, it's hit or miss. Developers have had good stories getting through in a relatively short amount of time, but some have had it closer to what I just described. You're waiting for months and then you get a no for something silly.
Right. Yeah. It is pretty cool that there's that option, but I guess that's also the other end of it. You gotta.
Yeah, but for now, the initial release of all the 600 content in Otosan, the game will be just in a browser, free to play. You don't even have to download anything. You just go to the website and fire it up. Right now, there is a password on it because some of my demonstrations have copyrighted stuff. So it's just sort of a friends and family proof of concept thing. Any testers that want to help me out, that's great. But in the end, it won't have a password. It'll just be, you go to the website, otosangame.com, and it loads up in your browser and you play what you want.
That is cool. I love it. I just love how some of my favorite games are from this time period, and there are amazing games now, but sometimes the learning curve is just intense, and like we've touched on, like we're in such limited time. It's hard to get involved in a game that's going to take me 4 hours to just learn how to control,
right?
Or a half an hour of story before I actually start playing. A lot of the fun games of my childhood were press start and you're in. And I think it's so cool that people are keeping that alive, like yourself and others that are releasing games like this. And also just like with the music too, I just, everything has progressed so much, but these like time periods are to me are like, they might as well be like movements in rock and roll or something that happened. Like we go back and we'll listen to like I don't know, like the grunge movement or something, or punk rock, and then it's like, well, we got like Sega Genesis style, we got Super Nintendo style, we got NES style music. That's kind of how it organizes itself in my head. So it's nice to see that this is still going on, just as there's still people making, Motown music of the 1960s. It's a cool thing.
Yeah, I mean, you had the golden age, the arcade machines, simple stuff. Then you had fast forward a bit, you're in the third, fourth gen, NES, Genesis, Super Nintendo, and PlayStation 1, 2, 3. But in the more recent years, the barrier to entry has plummeted. That it's just so easy. It's sort of like comparing me dropping notes into Fruity Loops. When I write music, I'm dropping notes into a piano roll. It's really easy. But the Super Nintendo composers had to do a lot more work to get their compositions into the game. Well, a similar thing has happened for all aspects of game creation. It's so much easier now. The tools we have, and a lot of them are free to use. And you can go on a Unity market and purchase a package of graphics assets, and now you have your graphics ready, and they're probably beautiful. So we have a saturation that we didn't have before. And even kids that maybe do have time and they don't have 5 jobs and are relegated to playing Game Boy on the subway, maybe those kids have a similar time constraint because their attention is being pulled in 11 different directions. And that wasn't the case when we were kids. Now there's hundreds of games. Kids have a backlog of games to play. Like, that's wild. So having the ability to jump in and play something quickly, like what I'm trying to do with Otosan, is really important because somebody who feels like they need to put Otosan into their backlog, even if they're in high school and have some free time in the summer, they still put it in their backlog because Call of Duty, Breath of the Wild, and whatever else. But now, if it feels like they can get in and out of it quickly, maybe it'll move up on their list a little bit, you know?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a big reason so many mobile games are so popular, because it's just boom, you're in, I'm going and playing, boom,
Yeah.
and zooming around, and okay, I can just stop.
Yeah.
But,
last year, what's that?
No, go ahead.
Last year, I didn't make as much new content for SixEngine because I was spending so much of my time converting it to Android compatibility. So now it will run on mobile. But that was really important. More important than writing the next batch of content was getting it mobile friendly so that maybe people can play it for a couple minutes while they're in line or waiting at the DMV or something.
Right. Yeah, so many platforms, right? A lot to convert to. But you're right, the barrier to entry has been great. It's great for music too. It's so easy to get involved. There are ways to create music on your phone where you can literally pick it up just like a game you could play on your phone, and actually make some music in 3 minutes without having to really figure out too much about what it is and understanding. It is a cool time. So there's so many different opportunities for people.
Yeah, I'm so lucky to live in the time that I live in and to be a content creator and storyteller in this time where that barrier is low. Because I don't know all the tricks. I'm not good at all this stuff. Like I said before, it's through sheer willpower that I have created anything that I have made because I'm not great. I'm just determined, you know?
I think you need to be, though. Like, even for me, every time I sit down and make music, it takes sheer willpower. I to pick up my guitar and try to write a song, for instance. I've been playing guitar since I was 14. I mean, I know how to do that, but it still takes the willpower. So maybe like having that to like figure this stuff out is also kind of a good way to just get yourself going. I think I heard. Maybe this might have been out of The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, but he says something to the effect of, a writer will tell you the hardest part isn't writing; it's sitting down to write. and that's the willpower, that's the commitment that is really hard to find. So, I can understand that, whether it's because you're muscling through because you don't know the stuff yet and you're learning, or just because you're trying to actually commit to setting aside the time and putting in the work.
Yeah, and it's a weird. It's weird to have a normal schedule of like day job responsibilities, and then you maybe have an hour on this day to code.
Yeah,
and for anyone who has at least dabbled in software development, a lot of people will find that it is very difficult to get your brain into a code base, and especially if it's a big body of code, like a video game engine with a lot of moving parts, it's tough to get your brain into that and get it all, become aware of it again, to work for 1 hour. That's really tough.
Yeah.
By the time you get revved up, maybe you have 10 minutes left, Oh, now I remember where I wrote that code. It's over here, and I have to use this variable. And now I'm out of time. So that's been the toughest part in making all this stuff, is just forcing myself to take full advantage of any opportunity to write code and write music, even if it's a small pocket of time, like an hour or something.
Well, I
I
believe
mean,
there's so much study, scientific studies out about how it takes our brains a certain amount of time to switch a task, to get into a different mode. And if you're going from like a more, say, I'm organizing my house, cleaning or something, to then go into a creative mindset takes the brain some time. And now you're not only going into the creative mindset, but now you're going into the world of coding, which is like a whole other language too. I'd have to imagine there's some buffer period of all right, where's my head? Let's get this sorted
yeah,
out.
yeah, and when you write code like that, okay, maybe I will ultimately succeed through willpower. But what I'm left with is a game engine that has been written piecemeal over 5 years.
Uh-huh.
And if you condensed it all into a regular full-time job, maybe it would be a matter of weeks or months, not years.
Yeah.
If I was working on it full-time, it'd take a lot less time. But what happens when you stretch it out over 5 years? I have no idea what I named this variable 5 years ago. Oh, I have a function that makes me walk this way? I don't remember that. So you end up rewriting stuff, reinventing the wheel occasionally, hopefully not too often, but it happens. Stuff like that happens. And yeah, it's really tough, but
I believe it. It
stick
reminds
to
me of
it.
my sample folders. I recreate something that I already have. Like, I already did that. I don't
Yeah.
remember. It was so long ago.
When did I do this? 2010? You got to be kidding me. Yeah.
That's so funny. Well, William, I want to, respect your time and give you time to get back to your coding as we gobble it all up here. Where do you like to send people? I have williamkage.com. That's kind of where I started myself with the music, the sound fonts, and some of the gaming stuff is all linked there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. WilliamKage.com is a great place to start. You can learn a little bit about making music, get started with some sounds, play around with Pokemon Midi if you want. You can also find from the top of my site, you can get to all the information about SixEngine, the game creation I'm doing, and Otosan, the new game that I'm creating. It's all there. So yeah, WilliamKage.com is a great place to start.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm so grateful to you for having me on here because I love talking to anyone who's interested in music and game music and making music in this style, because I think it is doable, and I think there's a lot of fun to be had, and you don't have to be intimidated by people who get upset about technicalities. Don't worry about those people. Just give it a shot. Try some free software like Fruity Loops Trial or GarageBand or whatever you can get your hands on. There's plenty of free stuff. And get some sounds and have some fun.
I agree 100%. I think a lot of times we build these barriers for ourselves. Well, I can't do that because I don't have the authentic this. I don't have the real that. I don't have that. I need a hardware synth. I need a proper DAW. And, like we there's so many reasons you can tell yourself that you can't do something yet. But as we mentioned, the gateways, the boundaries to getting started are like gone, really. I mean, you can do so much of this just on a mobile device, and don't worry about it. If you want to later on, as you learn about it, get all purist, that's cool too. Knock yourself out, but there's nothing to stop you from just exploring.
Yeah, and same goes with code. I mean, if you want to take a crack at code, JavaScript is a great place to start. Don't be afraid. If I can do it, anyone can do it. And if I can make SNES music, anyone can do it. I'm just a dude. I'm just mashing buttons like everyone else. It's no big deal.
Yeah, we're all just dudes and gals, right?
We're all just mashing buttons in life, right, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, I'm only doing this because I started doing it one day,
That's great. I'm so glad you did.
Yeah, me too. And it was scary and hard. And I with the podcast, for instance, I wanted to do it for a long time before I ever did. And I let it get too big in my head. I did the same thing I was just talking about. I said, well, I want to make it live. I want to do, video. I want to have sound effects going on. I want to demonstrate things. It got so big that I couldn't possibly start it. But one weekend, it got in my head, you know what? Let's just break it down to the most simple part, which is a microphone and my voice, and just start talking and see if I could even do that. And I busted out a few episodes in a weekend. And not long after that, I was like, all right, maybe I'll add a guest. and and now you've got some sound examples that we'll add in. And, I didn't even have an intro music when I started. The podcast just started. There was no music even.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, just start with what you can start with. Start with what's comfortable, and then add stuff.
Yeah, I didn't get like one ticket. I didn't get written up. I didn't get a fine. It got me going. The momentum is huge. Going back to the hardest part is sitting down to write. It really is. The hardest part is just starting, and not because starting is hard, just because you have to just decide to do it. So, I hope people get that out of this. It's for me too. Like, I'm excited. I'm going to try to see if I can play around some of these. I downloaded the Donkey Kong Country sound fonts from your site.
Oh, that's a good one. That's one that I worked on. Yeah.
And that game was like, I remember getting something in the mail, actually, from Nintendo. It was like, it was a VHS. Tape. Yeah. About
I got that too.
Yeah. It was about
this game is coming out. Check out this
revolutionary,
And you can if you turn around. I know you're supposed to go right, but go left and climb up on the thing, and you get like a balloon 1-up or something. These insider tricks. It's amazing. Yeah, that blew my mind as a kid.
Yeah, and the sound was really something else in that game. Just it felt like a new technology or something had come out. Well, thank you so much. Everyone go to williamkage.com. That'll take you to his site with the music and basically a link to everything. It takes you to SixEngine, which is the online game engine, basically, right? This is how you describe it.
And if anyone wants to play some of the Final Fantasy demonstrations or a demo of Otosan, just message me. It's all free to play. Just email me or DM me or whatever works for you, and I'll get you an access code so you can try it.
And I guess I'll put a link to that. It's the contact page. Just a warning: you're going to get millions of people now.
I know. I'm prepared for the wave. Your
look out,
fans foaming at the mouth. This new content that you've opened their eyes to.
I think some people will take you up on it. As I mentioned, we spoke with Remute, who released his game on a Genesis cartridge, which like my reaction was kind of similar to what you said about just that's a lot of work for someone to listen to your album. But he puts his music out online, distributes it on iTunes and Spotify and all that. But he was also surprised at how many people were happy to go through that step. The purists, out there were kind of like, yeah, this is it. So there's, I guess, a benefit to that too. The struggle of going through a little effort for something sometimes makes it more valuable for you.
Yeah, well, I mean, hey, I welcome any feedback. If you want to check out my stuff and tell me where I used 9 channels instead of 8, and you caught me, let me know. I mean, that's fine. I just want to make people happy. And if that makes you happy, then email me and tell me.
Cool. SNES@williamkage.com, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or Twitter, Facebook, whatever. You just message me anywhere. I'll give you an access code if you want to play. Or I'll help you with sound design, whatever you like.
Yeah,
I'm just here to help.
William Kage at Twitter, at William Kage for Twitter.
Yeah, that's right.
That's K for Cage, everyone. In case you didn't read it, it's K, not C. Cool. Thanks so much, William. A lot of fun talking to you. And hopefully I'll see you at Retro next year. We'll
all right, sounds good.
Meet up. And thank you all for listening. Appreciate it. Check out this stuff. It's really cool. And it's, even if you're not into gaming music necessarily, I think there's a lot to learn about making music philosophically as far as limitations go, as far as working within certain parameters of sounds, because I think we get hit with paralysis of choice very easily with our modern capabilities. So it's pretty cool to check out if for those reasons, nothing else. And if you love old games, then it's even better. So thanks, William, for being here. And thank you, everybody, for listening.